No, it's exciting to be here. Actually, I always like to start talks like this, just getting a sense of the audience. How many of y'all use Khan Academy in some way? Oh, it's good. How many of you have children that use it? Okay. And how many of you have no idea what Khan Academy is? There's a couple of people. Okay, I'll be speaking to you over the course of. So as it sounds like most of y'all know, Khan Academy got started off with me working with cousins, and I started making software and videos for them, and it soon became clear that people who are not my cousins were watching. But what I want to kind of talk more about over the course of the next few minutes is kind of where Khan Academy is going, or I guess even where it is. But to get everyone on the same page, I'll start with the montage of videos, but then we'll go beyond the videos, because at least in my mind, the videos are a small part of what we now do.
All these interactions are just due to the gravity.
This is an age right after Isaac Newton.
I'm told the humidity makes it feel hotter. Why is this?
Excellent question, LeBron.
And you can just see the pleasure he had.
Can you determine which light bulb is being switched?
Things actually can interbreed, although for these two in particular, it seems like the mechanics would get kind of difficult.
Keep playing around with these numbers and see what kind of colors I can come up with.
If this does not blow your mind, then you have no emotion.
Thought y'all would appreciate Euler's identity. So as I mentioned, it's much more than just videos right now. This is our computer science platform. Some of y'all might have used it. Our goal was to take computer science beyond where it typically is, where you just learn a for loop or a variable or an if-then statement, and really kind of show the creative side of computer science. And we have hundreds of thousands of students, anywhere from elementary age students all the way to graduate students, using our computer science platform in different ways, where they're creating games and screensavers, and they're able to have message boards and share their work with other people. This is kind of the meat of what we consider to be the Khan Academy experience. This is our missions, where students can pick something, they take a diagnostic based on how they do it, builds a statistical model of what they know and don't know, and then it starts giving them problems that are hopefully kind of at their learning edge, and there's a ton of game mechanics to hopefully motivate them and keep them as engaged as possible. And just as a snapshot of where we are now, Khan Academy is being used in almost every country on the planet. 300,000 registered educators. 10 million users. They've done 2 billion exercises. We thought we should have gotten the 2 billionth exercise a present or something, but we didn't do that. So this is our knowledge map, and it sounds like some of y'all are pretty familiar with Khan Academy, so you might have seen this. And it's no longer our primary navigational interface for the site. It used to be back when I was kind of hacking it together for my cousins. But I like to show it because it's an overarching view of how we think about education, especially math education. You saw the videos go into art history and all sorts of things. Our interactive experience is right now primarily math, although the goal is eventually to go into all fields. But in math, what you see is each of those circles are a concept. The top circle is basic arithmetic, 1 + 1 = 2, counting, things like that. And as you go further and further down that map, you get to more and more advanced things. And right now, the bottom of our map is college-level calculus and statistics and things like that. And the general paradigm is, as you're going through our missions and you're doing those exercises, as the system starts to determine that you've mastered a concept, it starts moving you down this map. And on some level, that's common sense. That's the way you would play a video game. You keep working on level 1 until you beat the level 1 boss, and then you go to level 2. It's the way you would learn a martial art. You keep practicing your white belt skills, and only when you pass the white belt exam, you become a yellow belt. But what we always point out is this is not the way that a traditional school architecture is set up. In a traditional school model, we group students together, usually by age, and oftentimes age and perceived ability once you get into middle school. And then we shepherd them together at a set pace where class time, there might be some lecture, students will go do some homework. The next day, you might review homework a little bit, get a little bit more lecture. And you continue that cycle for about maybe 2 or 3 weeks, and then you have an exam. And on that exam, let's say that unit was on basic exponents. And on that exam, I get an 80%, you get a 90%, you get a 60%. Even though that exam has identified gaps, the person who got a 60%, 40% of the material they didn't really get, even the person who got an A got a 95%, what was that 5% they didn't know? Even though that happened, the whole class then moves on to the next concept, say negative exponents, pretty much ensuring that students are going to have trouble working on that. And to kind of put in focus on how on some level, strange that is, imagine if we did other things in our life that way. Say home building. So you get the contractor in, and you say, well, you know, we've been told we have 3 weeks to build the foundation. Do what you can. And so does what he can. Maybe it rains, maybe the supplies don't show up on time, maybe some of the workers fall sick. And then 3 weeks later, the inspector comes in and says, well, the concrete is still wet right over there. That part's not quite up to code. I'll give it an 80%. You say, oh, great, that's a C. Let's build the first floor. Same process. We have 2 weeks. Do what you can. And at the end of it, you have 90%. Great, that's a B. Let's build a second floor, third floor. And then all of a sudden, while you're working on the fourth floor, the whole thing collapses. And if the reaction to that is what's often the reaction in education, you might say, oh, we had a bad contractor, or we needed more inspection. And who knows, maybe that played a role, but the real thing was the process. The process was broken. You were artificially constraining how long we had to work on something. Then you went through the trouble of having an inspection, of having a test. When the test identified weaknesses, identified deficiencies, you just really view those on a value judgment on the building or a value judgment on the student, and then you move on to the next concept. And so what we believe, and it's not a new idea, it's not new to Khan Academy, it's existed frankly for hundreds of years, this idea of mastery-based learning. It only now becomes more doable in the context of a classroom of 25 or 30 students, is instead of holding fixed when and how long a student has to learn something, and the variable being how well they learned it, A, B, C, D, F, do it the other way around. What should be fixed is that every student should master the concept, should master exponents. They should all get to the A level. And what's variable is when and how long they actually get to work on it. So this is something we're really excited about. As a lot of y'all know, Khan Academy started as this kind of completely supplemental tool. A lot of it was just kind of stuff that I was putting together for my cousins. Then we attracted some support, and we were able to start building a team. As many of y'all know, some local school districts started to use us, and now many do, including many of you. But our goal was always, well, can we create a resource that I guess you could say is enterprise grade, is something that is exhaustive, that fully meets all of the standards, that if a teacher or a parent, anyone uses it, can feel it's really covering with the proper rigor everything that a student needs to see. And so we've launched a few months ago in preparation for this fall, where you have the adoption of the Common Core in most of the states that y'all are in, where we have these missions. And each of these missions you can select a mission, and a student can work on them at their own time and pace. If a student's having difficulty, they can back up to a previous grade's mission. But the idea here is when a student finishes a mission, and we've been working with the authors of the Common Core on this, they really do understand the material in the Common Core. And so the idea here is that there's always been this tension when you have standards, when you have high-stakes exams and all of that, where, maybe standards are good, but does it end up people teaching to the test, and does it somehow take the creativity away from the classroom? And our goal is if teachers can feel good, if their students finish the mission, and they're getting reports on where all of the students are, they don't have to go into that mode, and it'll hopefully liberate more class time to do more Socratic dialogue, to do more projects, and to do more inquiry. This is just another view of kind of all of the missions mapped to all of the standards. And once again, it's not just videos. It's all of the exercises, exhaustive coverage of everything that's in the Common Core. You can search by Common Core standard. And this was very exciting for us. We're working with some of the major groups, Illustrative Mathematics, Bill McCollum, one of the math authors of the Common Core, because I think a lot of y'all appreciate this. Standards are one thing, but one thing that they're very clear on is that they aren't curriculum. They're not trying to tell people what to do on a daily basis. And one of their, I guess, pet peeves, I guess I would say, is when standards get implemented badly, where there's a decent standard, but maybe the test item is too literal of an interpretation. And I think we've all seen kind of these newspaper reports of a strangely worded Common Core item. And so we're really trying our best to be substantive and exhaustive, but also get the spirit while also being just pure good mathematics here. So this is, and I'm guessing that a lot of y'all probably have used Khan Academy in this way, but for those of y'all who haven't, this is just a little bit of kind of one of the dashboards that teachers use, and it gives you an idea of how it can be used in a classroom, where each of the columns here are a concept in mathematics, each of the rows are a student, and the depth of blue is the system's best understanding of how well the student understands that concept. And red means that the student is actually struggling. And so the model in the classroom is the teacher can let a bunch of students work at their own pace. If some students are stuck, he or she can do a focused intervention, or even better, get one of the other peers to tutor the students who are having trouble. So this was a pretty exciting, I guess, classroom, I could say, that we just happened to get introduced to in the last few years. And before I kind of show you the data here, I just want to be very clear. I don't want to give anyone the sense that Khan Academy can just be drop shipped into some classroom and all of a sudden the flowers will bloom and the butterflies will fly. And it's a tool, and it's only going to be as effective or as useful as how it's used. And what I'm going to show you, this is data from a charter school in Oakland, California, Oakland Unity School. The head of their math department is Peter McIntosh. And he had always, before he even knew about Khan Academy, had been a believer in mastery-based learning. His thesis was, he taught 9th grade algebra to students, many of these students coming 2-3 grade levels out of the local public schools, 2-3 grade levels behind out of the local public schools. And his underlying thesis was, okay, even if they're in algebra, 9th grade algebra, but some of these kids don't know their multiplication tables. Some of them aren't comfortable with decimals. If he allowed them to take ownership over it and build that foundation, that those same kids could thrive. And he had seen it on a smaller scale. So he started working with these students, and actually the year before, in 2010, when he started working with them, this was a math classroom, a 9th grade algebra classroom that was in the 22nd percentile in the state of California. And so over the last 3 years, they've gone to being in the 99th percentile in the state of California. There was only 9 9th grade algebra classes in the entire state that outperformed them. And that by itself was exciting, but what Peter tells us, and this is something that I never thought about when kind of he was doing this, or when any of these classrooms were doing this, he says, it's great their test scores improve, that's what everyone seems to care about, but in his mind, that's just the first order of the benefit the students got. These were students who came in completely convinced, actually frankly like a lot of my cousins were when I started working with them, that math isn't for them, completely disengaged. Teacher, you tell me what to do, is this going to be on the test? They engage with the problem for 5 seconds, say, oh no, I'm not good at math, I'm not going to be able to do it. But those same students, you allow them to set their own goals, and they start to realize that the teacher is there to essentially let them fulfill their goals, and they take ownership over their learning. And when they took ownership over their learning, that didn't just help their math scores, that helped all of their scores. And frankly, I think we can all appreciate that's the skill that you want to have. It's great to factor a polynomial, but it's even more important to be able to learn on your own and to really take ownership over your learning once you're off and on your own. Now, the next video I'll show, this just reminds all of us, I think, of just how much potential there is out there and how it can be expressed if we can just allow people to tap into it. So we could show the next video.
So I actually dropped out of high school twice, both during my freshman year. And when I eventually came back, I was put in sort of lower level math and science classes because I was so behind. Then I discovered Khan Academy. And I was able to skip 2 years worth of math just through using the site. And I came into school, I took the exam with students who had been enrolled in the class all year, and I was actually able to get the highest or the second highest scores in the class. So for me, Khan Academy really changed the trajectory of my entire life. Because without it, I don't think I ever really would have been inspired to learn and to love math and to love science. I ended up graduating as a valedictorian and going on to Princeton, where I'm now a computer science major, and I'm absolutely passionate about learning about computers, about math, about science. And without Khan Academy, I don't think that these things would really matter to me the way that they do today. So I'd just like to say a massive thank you to everyone at Khan Academy, Sal and the team. Please keep doing the good work that you're doing because you're really changing lives.
So what's neat about that is when we found out he's a computer science major, we contacted him and said, you know we have internships. And he applied, and he actually did incredibly well on all the interviews. And actually, Charlie has just joined us for his internship 2 weeks ago. So we're to some degree we're solving our own labor problems. It's very good. It's come full circle. So this is another a partnership that some of y'all might have heard of. About 2 months ago, the College Board, the makers of the SAT, announced that for 2016, they're going to have a new SAT that's much more aligned with what students learn, much more correlative with kind of college preparedness. And part of it, and you know, I give David Coleman, who's their new president, you know, all the credit in the world. They've always informally recognized, but now they're formally recognizing that there has been, at minimum, a perceived inequity, but probably a real inequity in terms of people's preparation for tests like the SAT. And so to help level the playing field, they decided to reach out to us and work with us to create not just free test prep, but the best test prep that happens to be free. And so, And in our minds, what this is, and this, you know, David Coleman really believed in, and I'm a big believer in this. The reason why they reached out is traditionally test prep has been something that you kind of do right at the end, right? You know, the 4 weeks before you take the test, you get familiar with it, you learn some test-taking strategies. But the underlying issue is if you really want equity here, you have to make sure that people are prepared well before, that they're getting rigorous, standards-aligned curricula well before. And so, you know, what we're excited about is a student could start in 7th grade or 8th grade or 9th grade, work on missions, work at their own pace, fill all the gaps in their knowledge, whatever they might be, but have that lens so that when they're ready for the SAT, it's not something that looks completely unfamiliar to them. So it's something very we're ultra excited about. So everything I've talked about so far has been the world that most of us live in, the developing world, the English-speaking world. As you could imagine, something like what we're doing could be of need in other parts of the planet. And every one of these pictures back here are other NGOs taking Khan Academy, sometimes offline, sometimes online, to every part of the planet. We get pictures like this sent in almost on a daily basis. And they're all exciting stories, but probably the most exciting one is the one in the top right. I used to give talks and say, you know, who knows, maybe one day this will be used in Mongolia, just imagining the furthest place on the planet. And then a few months after that, I got a letter from Mongolia. And it was from the young woman up there on the top right. Her name's Zaya. And, you know, she actually had a link, an email, and she had a link to a video. And I click on the video, very similar to Charlie's video, how she used Khan Academy. She really enjoyed it. And she loves math and all of these great things. But I immediately assumed that she must be middle class or upper middle class. Her English was quite good. She had access to the internet, clearly, and a computer. But then I read the text of the email more closely. And it turns out that there was a group of engineers from Cisco Systems that were using their vacation time to travel to Mongolia and set up computer labs in orphanages. And so what you see in the top right there, those are orphan girls in Mongolia using Khan Academy, and Zaya was one of those orphan girls. And that by itself was kind of, you know, something you would expect to read in like a science fiction book. But then it got even crazier. Since then, she sent that first email when she was 15. Since then, she's now become one of our top contributors of content in the Mongolian language. So it went full, kind of like Charlie, went full circle. So you know, part of this, our mission at Khan Academy is a free world-class education for anyone, anywhere. And obviously right now, anyone, anywhere, right now we had been primarily the English-speaking world. But we've been doing a big push in the last 2 years or so to internationalize not just the videos, the entire platform, the teacher dashboards, the exercises, everything. And so what you see here, this is the Spanish version of Khan Academy that we launched earlier this year, es.khanacademy.org. Everything that's in English is now in Spanish, and obviously that's not just for Latin America. That happens in a lot of your classrooms as well. And you can even have the same students in one classroom, some of them doing the exact same thing in English, some of them doing the exact same thing in Spanish. So at least now their ability to speak English should not hold them back in mathematics. And to give a sense of what these, at least the videos look like in different languages, I'll show you this next montage.
Me comí 2 cuartos de pizza.
L'hypoténuse commune, ok.
7, 13, 15.
और मैं इस हाथ से इस ब्लॉक को धकेलने की कोशिश कर रहा हूँ इस डायरेक्शन में.
توجد قطعتين من معدن النحاس والزنك.
פי אור בצהרון 2 ساعات تانية.
כי הנקודה שבה שוק הסיום של הזווית חותכת את מעגל היחידה.
Ili muweze kuelewa na kuweza.
16 bölü 16 1'e eşittir.
E muitas outras coisas importantes.
Isaiah from Mongolia, your videos are so interesting and funny, make more lessons.
I watch that whenever I get lazy. So these are just more pictures of, that we get sent all the time of students all over the planet. I mean, it reminds you there's a whole world out there, and frankly, there's a lot of kids of all ages, people of all ages who are hungry to learn. And what I tell everyone, and I want to make it very clear, Khan Academy is much more than me just now. We have 60 full-time folks. Our exercises that we talked about, the Common Core line, we've had close to 100 educators, researchers, graduate students helping us write and vet that content. We've had thousands of people help subtitle and translate content. It's turned into much more than just me. And what I tell everyone who's been involved at Khan Academy in any way, is I say, you hear the term once-in-a-lifetime opportunity a lot, but I think we're at a kind of a special time in history where it could be larger than that. That, for millennia, education has been the determining factor of, who's the haves, who's the have-nots. But it's always been scarce and it's always been expensive. And our hope, and it's not going to happen overnight, but a combination of Khan Academy and incredible, I would say, physical environments. And I want to be very clear, we are the biggest believers that it isn't about virtual or virtual versus physical. It has to be, these two things have to be blended together. And we see it in our data. When a student has a teacher, when they have a coach on Khan Academy, they have 50% more engagement in the work. So, we can prove the fact that an incredible teacher or coach or mentor can play an incredible, a measurable, a noticeable impact on someone's learning. But by putting these tools out there and by changing hopefully people's mindsets around learning, we can take this thing called education that's always been scarce, always a determinant between the haves and have-nots, and make it more ubiquitous, to the point that hopefully in the next 5, 10, 15 years, it becomes close to clean drinking water or shelter and just a fundamental human right. Thank you.